Hi, Chris Matton here from PricewaterhouseCoopers at the 20th Anniversary RiskMinds Conference in Amsterdam. I'm talking this morning with Professor Alistair Milne, who's a specialist in financial infrastructure at Loughborough Business School. Now, Alistair, you're talking this afternoon in a debate, I believe, on central clearing parties. What's this whole thing all about?
Well, central counterparties have been one of the main regulatory sort of developments since the crisis. So the Pittsburgh Summit in 2009 said that all the OTC derivatives, actually in the end it's going to be the more standardized derivatives, have to be guaranteed by a central counterparty, and we're well on stream to having that taking place in all the major centres.
That doesn't sound very controversial, so why is there a debate?
Well, it's not the way the market's developed, so it's actually a big change. It used to be that it was just the exchange-traded derivatives on Chicago Mercantile Exchange and so forth that were cleared through central counterparties. The major part of the market, interest rate swaps, forex derivatives, and so forth, they were all done bilaterally, and it was you went with the big dealers, whether it was a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs, whoever, and that's who provided the contract, and you didn't worry about having a guarantor in the middle.
So do you think they're going to be a good idea? Do you think this is going to help solve systemic risk?
Well, I think it's going to be useful. I'm not sure it's going to address all the things the regulators want it to do. I think there are two main reasons why central counterparty clearing is actually a pretty good idea. I mean, and the first, and this is ultimately what the regulators have in mind, is God forbid we have another crisis as severe as the last one, but what we've got to have in place are mechanisms that can resolve those situations. Firms go down, we have another Lehman Brothers with a lot of outstanding contracts. The great advantage of central clearing is you then have arrangements in place to deal with all the outstanding exposures. And I'm not saying that didn't work for bilateral with Lehman, but it was risky. And the question is, are there others out there with the deep pockets? Because essentially a central counterparty, it's got members, clearing members, and it's their guarantees which actually ensure that the contracts themselves.
But what about the argument that says that all we're doing is moving systemic risk from an individual financial institution, a Lehman Brothers or whatever, and now making the central clearing party exactly the same source of systemic risk?
The key thing is the clearing membership. So. And that's where I have a little bit of doubts about the way it's been done. But if you have 20 or 30 of the world's largest firms as the clearing members for a particular central counterparty, then effectively what you're doing is saying you collectively, this body of 20, is going to be responsible for the losses of the central counterparty.
But that sort of implies they've got to put up margin and collateral and everything else, right?
Well, that's when the controversy begins to come, because they've got to put in margin collateral, they've got to have all the default funds, and in terms of their own risk management, ultimately this is almost like unlimited liability. Anything that could go wrong on this central counterparty could end up on the books of on your own book.
Well, exactly, and from a normal risk management point of view, possession is 9/10 of the law. So if I'm a bank as a member of this exchange and another party has gone down, and someone comes to me and says, "Well, can I have 10 billion, please?" I'm likely to say, "Well, actually, no," and then fight it out in court. So will that really solve the problem?
Well, again, the key thing is the resolution mechanism. So, and I think someone like a London Clearing House, mentioned another central party, I think actually performed very effectively during 2008. They were able to organise auctions amongst their members and make sure that all the outstanding Lehman Brothers positions were dealt with pretty quickly. So it's clarity about the role of the central counterparty in a resolution situation, what that can then means for the clearing members, and that's where one of the big benefit is. There is another big benefit, and I think this is the reason why it has to be mandatory. It's good for competition. Having a central counterparty means you have standardized products, and it becomes relatively easy for smaller players to come in and offer the same contracts, either as a member themselves of the central counterparty, or it could be an agency relationship. So the big boys are a little bit uncomfortable with that. They can see their own margins being chased down. So I think that's the reason why it has to be mandatory, as opposed to being something which the industry itself organises. The regulator has to come in and say, we know this isn't actually the best thing for your margins, but for the health of the system as a whole, this has to be done.
Okay, that's one last question. Do you think you're going to win the debate?
Well, we've run this before, and I have to say we did a poll before and after, and so I won and I lost. I won on the first round. People thought, oh yes, it's a good idea. But I have to say, after we spoke, Craig had swayed a few people, so I'm hoping to keep them on my side this time.
Well, good luck this afternoon. That should be very interesting.
Alistair,
thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Thank you.